Hi. Continuing on with branch level 2, I'm gonna go to my tree parameters and set the viewport levels to 2, and this will give me access to branch level 2. So I'm gonna go there, and first I need to decide on how many branches I need to insert. I'm aiming for a thick tree, therefore I need to increase the insertion count. The one I'm using here is actually 10 inserted branches. Also, I need to lower down the inserted branches across the parent branch. And for this, I'm going to use a value of, say, 0.22. And this will lower down the inserted branches across the parent branch. I can play with the insertion bias to intensify the insertion at one end over the other. The value I'm going to use for this is 1.63. And this will concentrate the inserted branches towards the bottom. You can offset the inserted branches from the tip. In this case, I'm not going to do that. This is it for the parameters under branch insertion. If I go down to the point to tip, I can play around with the point to tip. If I leave it set to 1, it means that the tip branches are going to point exactly to the orientation of the parent branch. If I did not want to do that, I can set it to 0. You can lower this down to intensify this divergence, but otherwise I'm going to set it to 0, and this will actually leave the branches have their own orientation without pointing to the tip of the parent branch. Also, I can play around with the spread angle. I can increase it or decrease it. In the case of branch level 2, I'm going to leave the default, which is 30 degrees in this case. The last thing I want to change in this branch level is the length. I'm going to set it to 235, say, to make them a bit longer. Also, I'm going to zoom in and play with the radius of the branches so that they look like they are sprouting out of the thick level 1 branches that we have already. Now here, if I zoom in, I see that the thickness is not really good at the end because the parent branch is tapering. So I can increase the reduced radius on branch until I get the proper reduction in the radius. Also, I have to check this from the top to make sure that it looks good, which it does. All right, moving on to branch level 3, so I'm going to go back to tree parameters and increase the viewport levels to 3. Now, note that at this stage, the tree does not look like the original tree that I showed you at the beginning, because there is a secret ingredient that I also have to use. But for now, I'll just keep on with adding the different branch levels with the different parameters. So this is branch level 3. The number of insertion branches is going to be 7. So here I see what I have. And then I can play with the insertion bias. I'm going to set it to 2.5 so that I have more spreading of the branches. And then I'm going to offset by 1 segment from the top. And the pruning, I'm going to decrease it to a value of 0.4. So I have a more uniform distribution of these branches. Also, I'm going to set the point to tip to 0. And the length of the branch is going to be 100 centimeters, with the radius being 5. Now, of course, I need to zoom in also and make sure that the radius is properly propagated along the branch, which actually it is. Okay, so that's good. Next, we have branch level 4. So I'm going to go to tree parameters and set the viewport levels to 4. Go to branch level 4, and here I need to have 3 inserted branches. I'm going to increase the insertion bias. By now we know what the insertion bias is. It's the concentration of the inserted branches either towards the base or towards the tip of the branch. The pruning is going to be 0.25, and the insertion bias is going to be 2, and the offset from tip is going to be 0. So this is what I have for branch level 4. I need to change the branch length and the radius. So I'm going to scroll down, and the branch length, I'm going to set it also to a value of 100 centimeters, so long, and the radius is going to be 5 centimeters. It looks like a very odd tree for now, but bear with me until I finish all the levels, and then we'll see how to customize it. Then I'm going to set the viewport levels to 5, and here I see that I'm starting to get leaves because the leaves are set to the start level of 5. So I'm going to uncheck the leaves for now. I'm going to go to branch level 5. Here I'm going to have 3 inserted branches. The insertion bias 1.5. I'm going to offset from the tip by 1 so that we don't get the branches emitted from the very tip. And the pruning is going to be 0.2 so that the branches are emitted from close to the base of the parent branch. Here I want to spread out the emitted branches, so I'm going to increase the spread angle to 55 degrees. And the length is going to be 55 centimeters, and the radius is going to be 1.5 centimeters. Also, I want to shorten the tip of these branches, so I'm going to set the shortened tips to a value of 0.3. This will shorten out the tips, but I see that these branches are pointing towards the parent branch. Therefore, the point to tip value is going to be 0, and this will spread out these branches. So these are the 5 branch levels that you want to have. It doesn't look like a very realistic tree yet because it's missing one final ingredient. And this is found under the global controls. And this is actually the global pruning value. So if I go to branch prune and set it to a value of 0.3, I'm going to push the branches out from their parent base, and this will actually concentrate the branches more towards the tip of the parent branch. And this will actually give me a very nice distribution. I can increase it if I want, and therefore get a different look for the tree. If I do increase it, however, I see that here the tapering of the first level branch is too high for these, so I would want to go back to the branch level 1 and reduce the tapering to something like 0.6 or 5, and this will give me the proper radius along the first level branches. Okay, but in this case, I exaggerated the global pruning so that you see what's happening here. What I used in my original tree is a value of 0.25, and this is what I have here. I need to add the leaves, so I'm going to go to leaves and click on generate leaves. Now, whenever I do that, because I have a lot of levels which are displayed in the viewport, it might get a bit slow. So to actually really focus on the emitted leaves, I'm going to set my branch level 1 insertion to 1 to focus really on the leaves, and then I can change it back to 15. So let's go to the leaves, and here I have the leaf start level set to 1, which is good. Now the prune leaves is set to 12 because that's the value in the default tree. I'm going to reduce that to 0 so that the leaves are not pruned. Pruning the leaves will actually remove the leaves all the way up to the tip of the branch. Keep every nth is set to 3, which means that every third leaf will be kept. So I'm going to set it to 1 so that all the leaves are kept. Also, I'm going to go down and I'm going to uncheck symmetrical spread. So I have leaves that are rotating around the branch. And here I'm going to work on the swiveling. If I set the swivel to 0, then all of them have the same orientation or direction along the height of the branch. So I'm going to increase that value to get a nice spreading. And I'm going to also play with the tilt. I'm going to set it to 0 so that I have no tilting along with the variance of the tilt. So this is what I have. Don't forget that you need to set the horizontal value to 0 so that you have the proper orientation. The horizontal value is set to 1 by default for the default tree. This will horizontalize the orientation of the leaves, so you need to set this value back to 0 so that you have the proper orientation of the leaves. And now you can actually play with the point to branch step, and the spreading will show properly everywhere. And